Good evening. Welcome to Littleton Conservation Commission's meeting for October 25th, 2022. We have our posted agenda. We would like to start this evening. We're going to put a hold on approving minutes because we have here the Littleton Water Department. Corey is here. And Corey, if you're able, do you want to go ahead and take over for this? We recognize we can give you a few minutes, and happy to hear some updates.
Excellent. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us here tonight. I have two members of the Board of Water Commissioners here with me. I see Vice Chair Ivan Pegasic is on. I don't see Scott Larson on here. I think he's going to be joining us in a few moments. He's the chair of the board. And then we also have Ivria Fried, who's been here with me a few times in the past. So it's been a couple of months since we've discussed the Cobb's land and DEP's requirements for the water department to own or control all of the land within the Zone 1 aquifer protection area of the Cobb's wells. So I figured I'd start out with just a kind of quick update and recap of where we're at with that. So as you know, Ivria and I have come to your meeting several times over the past 6 months or so. And we've presented you all with drafts of the proposed conservation restriction amendments for each of the Cobb's parcels that are within that Zone 1 aquifer protection area. We've also presented a draft memorandum of understanding between yourselves and the water commissioners for discussion purposes, and a draft town meeting article that would transfer care, custody, and control of lots 10 and 11 from the Conservation Commission to the water commissioners. And I think from what we've heard over those several meetings have been, and correct me if I misspeak, but I think your primary concerns were about the potential for the water department to bring water from offsite to be treated at Cobb's in the future, which you'd like to see avoided, and also the exact size and location of the proposed treatment facility on lots 10 and 11. So you're obviously looking to minimize the impact of the treatment facility on the conservation and recreation value of the land. And I know there's also the issue of the existing trail that runs through the properties, and the uses that are allowed on that trail, such as horseback riding. Did I recap that correctly? Members of the commission, is there anything else that I missed on there that were primary concerns?
The only, excuse me, Corey. The only other thing I'd add is that we had also asked that in the event that we do need to access wells, it looks like that's not a concern anymore, but we're doing those in the least invasive way possible.
Right, any monitoring wells or that sort of thing, right? Yep. Yeah. So we wouldn't be building new roads beyond what's already kind of already there. That's correct. So I know your meeting agendas are pretty tight. I appreciate you giving us some time tonight. I know there's never really too much time to really dive into these issues because I think we can all appreciate that they are pretty complex at this location. It'll really take some dedicated time to kind of work through everything and come to agreement on everything. So what we were hoping to do tonight at a minimum is just set up sort of a separate working group with maybe a couple of your members to meet with myself and a couple of our commissioners. I know we were kind of trying to do that over the summer, and that was just a difficult time period for everyone. I think there's a lot of stuff going on. Now that we're into the fall, I'm hoping maybe people will have a little bit more availability to set something like that up, and maybe even be able to schedule something tonight for, a future date and time where we could have, like I said, maybe two members from the commission or whatever you please to meet with myself and Ivan Pegasic and Scott Larson.
Corey, Chase, Corey, can you tell us what you would like for that? Are you looking is Zoom appropriate? Are you looking for in-person? What are your presentation thoughts?
Yeah, I think I think we're open to any of those. I mean, in-person seems like it's often more effective, but if schedule-wise it's easier to do over Zoom, I think we can do that as well.
And then lastly, where we have many of the commissioners have full-time jobs during the day, are we accessible after work, evenings, perhaps different times as well?
Yeah. I can make myself
commissioners also have full-time jobs, and we'd appreciate it after work too.
Okay. Right.
We can
So-
certainly accommodate that.
Right. We recognize that we have 3 commissioners that were unable to make this meeting tonight, but I would go forth and ask if there are committee members that would like to dedicate some time, perhaps like 2 meetings or even a great 1 working meeting to get this kind of hashed out to be able to present back. Our next meeting is, I believe, December 6th or so. I don't know if it's realistic to have everything done and drafted by then.
November 15.
What is it?
November 15.
Right, I didn't think that we'd get it done by then, so that's why I was projecting out. What's your kind of time frame, Corey? I know that you've been patient. Does that continue?
Yeah, I think we'd really like to make sure we're going to meet the spring town meeting timeframe. We've kind of had to skip over a couple of town meetings. So if we can I think on our end, we have as complete of a draft as we can have right now, for you. And so if we can have, like you said, a couple of meetings to kind of sit down, work through any requested changes on your part, it'd be nice to, like you said, maybe that December meeting, come back, present it to the full commission, and at that time, hopefully get a vote from the commission. And if not then certainly the meeting after that. That way we're in good shape for Springtown meeting.
Okay. Are there any commissioners, Chase, Brian, Kyle, that might be interested? I would like to have at least 2 on that, and then have Amy as an advisee for some of our questions.
So the only, sorry to interrupt, Chair, but the only concern that we would have with 2, which is fine, is the open meeting law. So
So we'll stick with
it's
2.
fine. We have no issue with those meetings being open, but just for scheduling, it makes it a little bit more complicated, but we can definitely do that.
Our quorum is 4.
Right, but the creation of a subcommittee, subcommittees need to follow the open meeting law. So if we're designating 2 individuals to work on a specific matter, yeah.
Okay. I was thinking
Not a huge
more
deal.
task force, or or we dedicate specific working time in an open meeting at the next hearing or the December 6th hearing, and just go ahead and set aside for all commissioners. That's up to the committee, though, what you'd like to do.
I'd say, Sarah, a working group is probably a more efficient way of doing it.
Okay.
And I don't think I have any issue posting the meeting. I mean, my understanding is the water department with Ivan and Scott might have to post it anyway. So somebody wants to attend, they're welcome to.
Just give us more than 48-hour notice.
Yep.
Chase, Brian, or Kyle, any interest? And then we can certainly circle around with Carl and Andrew.
Well, Sarah, I have interest. Corey, I owe you an apology. I know I've been remarkably difficult to schedule.
That's good. I understand.
You were very kind in explaining that we've had some challenges setting up meetings without calling me out individually. But Sarah, I do have some time over the next few weeks that I could make it work.
Okay, so, and then what we'll do is we'll reach out to also Carl and Andrew and see. So Corey, we'll put that on our docket to do, and then we will try and get something, hopefully first meeting within a week. Okay.
So we'll wait to hear from you on that then, as far as you're going to propose a couple of dates once you touch base with the others.
I think, Chase, do you think that's appropriate?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. Do you, would it make sense to set a tentative date and time right now, Sarah? And
That'd be great.
Yeah,
who
that'd be
was
great.
available?
Yeah.
I know it might constrain our availability, but then at least we've got something on the
Right.
books.
Yeah, I mean, if
I think I would lean potentially to Tuesdays, because those are kind of some of our nights that we hold for meetings, if that works. But Chase, I would defer to you.
And I'll be out of town next Tuesday.
All right, Corey.
Well, Tuesday is also town meeting anyway, so.
Oh, that's right. Yep, sorry. Okay. All right. I don't want to speak for other people, so let us try and circle back around, and we'll get something to you all within the coming days.
Well, do you want to
Okay,
shoot
and we
tentatively for
can meet at the
Tuesday?
water department. That's fine as well.
Sorry,
We can meet at the water department.
Do you want to try to shoot for November 8th, Tuesday, November 8th? That is election day, but I don't know if anybody objects to that.
I don't know that you can actually hold.
Actually, that's probably
on
true.
that day.
Yeah, that's a good point, though. I think that is the case.
I think I might be traveling that day. And the next week, target,
So Thursday is the 10th. I think, wait a minute.
Or the end of next week is the 3rd.
yeah, the 3rd or the 4th.
The second or
fourth's a
third?
Friday, the 2nd or 3rd. I could do the 3rd in principle.
3rd is good.
Okay. We'll shoot for the 3rd. What time would work best?
Why don't we pencil that in, Corey, and then let's check with the rest of our membership to confirm it and maybe sort out a time. If Ivan, if you think you guys have a little flexibility there, then
Yeah, any time is fine with us.
After, we're considering what, after 4:30, after 5 o'clock?
After
Okay.
5 is fine.
Okay. Okay, we will circle back around and hopefully I think you could go ahead and plan on posting that and we will try and make that happen.
Yeah, if Carl or Andrew have no strong feelings of being involved, I'll gladly help out. So, and I can make that day work.
Okay, that would be awesome, Kyle. So let's go ahead and shoot for that November 3rd after 5 p.m. Ivan, perhaps you can dedicate the time and that. Okay.
Yep, not a problem.
Okay, great. I appreciate you all having patience and keeping up with this, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Nope, thanks for having us. Have a great rest of the meeting.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so we're going to scoot back to our proposed agenda where we have the approval of the minutes from October 4th that have been circulated. Do any of the members have any omissions or corrections to October 4th, 2022?
I thought they looked good, and those were a doozy. Thank you, Amy and Tim.
Yeah, those
Yeah,
it was a long one.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep, okay. If we do not have any changes, if we can have a motion to approve, that would be great.
I move that we approve the minutes from October 4th, 2022.
Okay,
I second that.
thank you. We have a first and a second, so we do not have a roll call person who would like to help us with that this evening.
We can take the roll call, sir.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to begin.
Brian Crowley,
Brian Crowley, aye.
Kyle Maxfield,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
myself, aye, and Sarah Seward.
Sarah Seward, aye. Thank you. That motion carries. Okay, let's go ahead and, sorry, in terms of approval of minutes, administrative discussions. We'd like to set up a site walk for 35 Queen. They would like to be there with us, so we'd like to try and make a consolidated effort to do that together. I am available this Thursday and Friday. I know sometimes people are available at lunchtime or later. Or throw out some other days that people might be available for 35 Queen.
Thursday could also work for me, Sarah, but probably not until the end of the business day.
Do you want
When
to
we start to lose light.
throw out a time?
5.
Yep.
That works.
Okay. All right, well,
Is that
let's,
bad for anybody else?
Yeah, I won't be able to make that Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening.
Andrew can usually make sometimes those times, right? 5:15.
Yeah. Kyle, did you say yes or no?
Cannot.
Kyle or Brian, can you do earlier in the day on Thursday?
Right now, lunchtime on Thursday or Friday looks good for me. Subject to change, but right now they look good.
Same for me.
So you could do lunch.
Could. Yep.
Why don't we do this? Because I know engineers are required to be there. Let's go ahead and hop in 2 times for them. That we will be there at 12 and a little bit after 5. So maybe we can get Andrew to jump in with Chase
Yep.
as well? Okay, all right, perfect, thank you. Okay, acceptance of easement, 1 Douglas, which is lot 36K R08 135. Amy, that's you?
Yeah, sorry, I meant to be able to throw a map up for you, but this is to replace the easement that didn't happen, that leads from the K neighborhoods into town forest. So this is down at the cul-de-sac. And the owner down there has agreed to provide an easement. So if that sounds good to you guys, I would need a vote, and then I need actually live signatures. If we're gonna have a bunch of site walks, I can just bring it with me.
Okay, that would be awesome. Okay, do we have anyone that would like to make a motion for the acceptance of the easement on 1 Douglas?
And I will say, it's your 4, I'm gonna need the signature since you voted.
Yep, that's fine. So Thursday would hopefully work.
We'll figure something out.
Okay. Great. Do we have a motion?
I will move that we accept the easement at 1 Douglas, lot 36K, R08 13-5.
Second.
You do a roll call vote. All those in
Yes.
favor? Kyle Maxfield,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Brian,
Ryan Crowley, aye.
myself, Chase Gervig, aye. And Sarah?
Sarah Seward, aye. Thank you. Unanimous, and we will have signatures by the end of the week. Amy, update. I know we've talked about the 495 spill update, which I don't think we've had the update.
Nope.
Yeah.
They're basically done.
Okay,
So
Good. Right. There's something.
still kind of trying to get a site walk, but I don't think it's going to happen. And I don't think it'll make a difference at this point if it does happen.
What does done mean?
What did he say? That they certainly don't have the final write-off from DEP, but it's moved from I forget, but they think they're wrapped up.
Okay.
You know, ongoing monitoring, but I don't know if there's at this point going to be any discussion of whether or not that side slope gravel stays or not.
I guess that would be my concern. They thought they were wrapped up 2 months ago.
Yeah, right. And nothing's changed, right? So
No.
I don't understand how we are getting completely just brushed aside on this.
Amy, have you been on site?
After the accident, I was.
Okay. So I guess I would propose for Amy to at least, if you have time, to jump back on site and let us know if that's something that we need to kind of circle back around on.
Yeah, I can go back and take pictures. I mean, the problem is that DEP has jurisdiction here.
Right. So we get trumped by DEP. It doesn't really matter what we think.
Well, you can still express concern and go on record.
Yeah, there's a community involvement requirement for any closure.
Yeah.
I'm just shocked that DEP would overrule.
Well,
Objection.
DEP, I talked to, and again, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna remember who was I talked to down there just to see if he'd actually been broached to see if they would do a site walk. He said he did get a call. They would be willing to do a site walk, and I think the biggest problem is he was having a hard time getting DOT's attention. I said, well, let's just do it without DOT.
Right.
He said he didn't want to do it without DOT.
Okay. Well, maybe if you can just do a drive, and if that's something that we need to go look at as a committee, we can do that as well.
Yeah, I'll see if I can pull off and get some pictures.
Okay, great. Request for certificate of compliance 204-284 for 43 Mattawanakie. Is that considered Mattawanakie Road or Mattawanakie Trail?
Trail.
Trail, okay.
And that was from an old septic system, and I just noticed that they had not received the certificate of compliance when their current application came in. So it's, you probably noticed, it's all stable out there, and I think that's ready for certificate of compliance.
Okay, do we have a motion for that?
Sure. I will.
I'll move to issue a certificate of compliance for 204, Mass DEP file number 204-0284 43 Mattawanakie.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. All those in favor? Brian Crowley,
Ryan Crowley, aye.
Kyle Maxfield,
Maxfield, aye.
myself, Chase Carvig, aye. Sarah Seaver.
Sarah Seward, aye. Thank you, carries. Budget narrative.
I sent that around. I didn't know if anybody wanted to take a look through that or not. And actually often Andrew does.
We don't have.
Really, except for the numbers, the rest of it doesn't really change that much year to year. And I'm making Tim go through the numbers this year, so.
Okay, awesome. That'll be a great exercise. Okay,
Can
any
we
other?
get to assign it to Andrew because he's not here?
Sure.
Isn't that how that works?
That's how it works.
No, we can.
That's why I show up. I'm afraid of more assignments.
Okay, any other updates or administrative actions?
Just two things. I was just gonna mention that, I think I mentioned this before, the grid has started their boring program over at the utilities, and if you take a
Yeah.
drive
That was
down,
pretty,
yeah, if you drive down Beaver Brook, you will see the swamp mats in place if you ever want to see them in action.
yeah, they were there when we went to Mattawanaki, right? I pulled over
Yeah.
on my way up.
Oh,
It was
right, of
pretty-
course,
Pretty
Yeah.
substantial over there.
because they had to do all the stepping down, like they said, so.
It would be nice to capture some photos of that's something that would be nice on the conservation website as well. And if we can make sure that they are removing from the northeast side as they're working west. Okay,
Amy, I know.
I'm not sure that anybody here from the high school environmental club about the plastic recycling, plastic bags. But if someone pops in later, we might be able to hear them at the end.
okay. Any other discussion items?
I had one question about the drilling program. Amy, I know usually our orders of condition allow us to access property to inspect what's going on. Do we have that condition on the National Grid easement, given the work that they're doing and so on? And if
We do.
can we go take a look?
Tim and I did a ride, a drive-by with them along the line. We didn't walk the entire thing, but we saw most of it. Given that it's pretty heavy construction and they're fairly serious out there with the drilling and everything, I would at least give them a heads up. You certainly can stand on the side of the road and look, but if you want to walk down and get into the drill rig, we should arrange that ahead of time.
Okay, is it okay with you if sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
No, I recall having that conversation as part of this process. We asked that we could have access, and they just made it clear that we need to give them a heads up and have all the appropriate PPE, hard hat, glasses, boots.
Okay. Amy, I may shoot you and Tim an email to do that at someday, and I'll coordinate that through you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. All right, let's scoot right along. 7:45 continued public hearing, Mass DEP 204-0974, notice of intent 1 and 2 Monarch Drive. I see that we have Sue Carter here. If you would like to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Certainly. I'm Sue Carter. I'm a professional engineer at Places Associates, and we are the project engineer for VMD. Also with me tonight, I see is Brian Butler, who has been working on this site. Just for a quick update for the commission. Can I share my screen, Amy?
Yep, you should be able to.
All right. Why am I not seeing share screen?
Down on the bottom.
Okay, now I got it. Sorry. Can everyone see my screen now?
Not
Oh,
yet.
wait a minute. Share.
Not yet.
Got it.
There you go.
Okay. How's that? Can we see it now?
Yes.
Okay. This, just to give you a quick update from last meeting, these are the presentation plans we gave you last meeting. As you recall, we're building a 98,000 square foot warehouse building that's going to be leased by Pods. We had multiple areas where, this entire site is a priority habitat area. Part of our project, obviously, is the development of the warehouse building and associated parking, loading docks, drainage structures. But we also have a nesting habitat area. And we have a turtle culvert, both of which part of the conservation management permit if you recall, we talked about the fact that we have some work in the 50-foot no disturbance zone down here at the entrance to the site, and that was a function of the elevation, so the drainage outfalls with daylight. That area is currently lawn. We have some intrusion into the 50-foot for the turtle culvert, and that was to allow safe passage under Monarch Drive. We had an emergency overflow to this detention basin, also a function of the existing grades. We have the access in the turtle nesting habitat area. And we also have some utilities that will be in the 50-foot zone. We have new electrical and telecommunications, as well as force mains crossing the existing culvert, which is right here. You recall the culvert's only 104 feet long, so there's no way to avoid the 50-foot no disturb zone. We have another area down here where we are taking the existing overhead utilities, which are electric and communications, and they are being put in conduit below grade. So we will be passing close to the wetlands up here. At our last meeting, the commission asked us to look at giving some benefit to the community for this work in the buffer zone. So what we have looked at is our site, and what you see here crosshatched in red is an area that we're proposing vegetation management control for invasive species. This is basically the area from our erosion control barrier to the nearest edge of wetlands. For those of you who have been out there, that's the area that while it's still somewhat scrub brush, we have white pines coming in, as well as there's a lot of autumn olive and bittersweet in that area. And I know we saw some, I think it was buckthorn down in the front here. What we are proposing is these two crosshatched areas, which total 2.05 acres for control of those invasive species. And this is really the most ideal spot because it gets the most sun, and it's where we're starting to see the invasive species take over. In conjunction with this, we have notes for the vegetation control plan. Brian Butler's here, he can speak to that. And the other thing that we have proposed is a conservation restriction sign detail, which would be green lettering on a white background saying no dumping, no unauthorized alteration or mowing, so that we can restrict access into the CR area. And those CR signs are designated by these blue triangles. So you can see it wraps around the perimeter of the work area, around the septic areas. And then what we've done is coming up Monarch Drive, we said it's to be placed within 5 feet of every lamppost that's out there. And those are about every 110 feet or so, up to where the utility easement comes in. We also have one on the gate going out to the turtle nesting habitat area. So Brian, if you'd like to explain what we're going to be doing for invasive control, that would be good.
Sure, Sue. Hi. It's basically a exercise in subtraction. Would just go in, and good portions of it are already covered with native white pines and some oaks, but those portions that have autumn olive, bittersweet, rhamnus, European buckthorn, or European buckthorn, multiflora rose, and all the MyPag species we want to attack with either mechanical removal or paint and dab treatments as appropriate using licensed herbicide applicator. And we plan on doing that as a spring treatment and a fall treatment. So there'll be no real planting or no other manipulations except removal of undesirable species in that band that kind of parallels the man-made ditch there for the most part, but is in CR, and it's also within the 50-foot threshold. It's otherwise will be untouched by the project for the most part. As Sue said, it's about 2.05 acres. Is that the
Yep.
figure? No.
And there's a little less of it the CR line roughly parallels your 50-foot buffer zone, but in places it's we're doing a little bit less, other places a little more. So if anybody needs the totals of the amount of area within the CR or within the 50-foot buffer, I can get those to you too. But for the sake of time, this gives you a general overview of what we're proposing.
Yeah, I think that's about 1.8 or 85 acres in the CR from what I've mapped out of it. Is that?
Yeah, I
something?
had about 1.77 acres in the CR.
Yeah.
And that isn't allowed use in those CRs. Some of those CRs are a general CR, some are designated for drainage and will be unused for drainage.
Yeah, there's only 400 square feet of the drainage area 2 allowed use area that I think is actually used for drainage.
Correct. We're
Okay.
using 457 square feet in CR drainage 2, and that's for this overflow from this large infiltration basin. And if you recall, that basin by calculations does not overflow in the 100-year storm. And that was using the NOAA Atlas 14. But if you recall, that's an area of just exposed sand. And our concern is that if we had some extraordinary rainfall or back-to-back rain, we wanted to make sure that any overflow was in a controlled, stabilized area rather than just across the surface of loose sand. Does anybody have any questions or need any more details?
I had one question, maybe Amy, if it's okay, I'll ask you a question first. In terms of invasive controls, what frequency is appropriate to actually maintain those invasive controls? Is an application in fall and spring the way you would want to go, or would you rather see it spread out more frequent? What does a program look like that you think makes sense?
Was that addressed to us or to Amy?
I was asking Amy
Yeah.
what she thought.
That was my question of Brian.
Okay, well, there you go.
Frequency
now it's your question, Brian.
and like how long?
The proposal right now is to treat it twice in the 2023 calendar year. One spring and a kind of a follow-up in the fall for whatever, might escape. We hadn't proposed doing that on an ongoing basis or perpetual basis. We're just trying to, I guess, essentially restart the clock after 25 or 35 years of abandonment since the gravel work stopped there in the 80s. So maybe that's even more than that. We're just trying to kind of set back the clock. We weren't necessarily committing to a perpetual or lifetime management of the area, but we think it's a treatment of the entire 2 acres will be a pretty good resetting of the invasive species clock. And we'll be eliminating between the building footprint, the nesting habitat to the roughly north of that area, and where we'll be removing, of course, all the vegetation or most of the vegetation. It'll be a significantly lower or lesser seed source from autumn olive and other pernicious vegetation than there is certainly today. It's kind of growing at an exponential rate today, and where we just want to reset the clock, which should persist for a minimum of 20 to 30 years, particularly with the diminished seed base that'll be available there. It's not gonna cure the problem for perpetuity, but it's certainly beats the daylights out of doing little or nothing.
Okay, do any of the other commissioners have any questions?
I know that you're planning on the monitoring a report at the end of 2023. I'd personally like to see another report a year later and maybe even 2 years later, not necessarily additional treatments, but, just monitoring to see how effective those initial 2 treatments were at knocking those species down.
We can certainly provide that. If for no other reason, we'll be in the conservation management permit, we are proposing, or the Heritage has requested, 2 years of fairly intensive monitoring of the nesting habitat, its efficacy, the use of it, successful emergence of hatchlings, with protected nests. And so there's going to be a presence out there. And so that's not really a huge imposition to document this. And we'll actually be doing vegetation monitoring out there using drones, as opposed to in the permit that was issued in 2009, the protocol for the nesting habitat to manage or monitor its successional state was to do belt transects and different quadrats and vegetative measurements that are standard but a little old school. Whereas nowadays with drones, you can we did one on the vineyard where the initial permit in 2011 said to do these belt transects and all these measurements that are pretty laborious and really don't necessarily represent the entirety of the plant community that we're trying to maintain, a cultural grassland. So we've shifted gears in the last 2 sessions where we just fly the entire area. We can import that mosaic into our GIS, and we can map and quantify how much coverage by pitch pine, by red cedar, grasslands, and scrub oak and all that. So we could certainly probably apply the same here. We're going to be doing flights there anyway. So if you want to condition that, I don't think we have to get permission from BMD to adopt that for those 2 years.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Super suggestion. Let's go ahead. We had some discussion on waiver request. So I want to see if we have any other questions regarding the request summary that was submitted to us. What are the thoughts? Yeah, go ahead, Chase.
My comment on that, Sarah, would be that depending on how we go here, I'd like the findings to reflect, if we can agree on this, that the mitigation is particularly focused on addressing some of the components that are associated with the construction of the building. That is, I don't consider that, for example, the crossing culvert and fence and the habitat enhancements, those are, in my opinion, in their own right in the public interest. I see the 2 acres of mitigation as being offsets associated with the overflow recharge area and the infiltration basin at the southeast corner of the building. And when I look at those two, 1,500 square feet relative to 2 acres worth of invasive species, I can get my head around it.
Okay.
I think when we start to look at it more in its totality, it looks like more of an area, but I think we should consider a finding that says some of these incursions into the 50-foot are in the public interest in their own right.
Brian or Kyle, any other thoughts or questions? What direction would we like to go in?
Can I throw out 2 things that the commission usually discusses but haven't come up yet is snow removal, de-icing. Since a bunch of this parking lot is in the buffer zone.
And snow storage. Yep. Sue, do you want to address those?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find my right plan that shows snow storage, so. Okay. This shows snow storage around the perimeter. I guess my main comment on that is because we're going to be storing empty pots outside, it's not like we're going to be having heavy traffic with a lot of pedestrians, people getting in and out of their cars. So I think it'll be a smaller volume of de-icers or anything like that. And we fully anticipate that no sodium-based de-icers will be allowed. We have shown snow storage just outside the 50-foot no disturb zone at the ends of the parking lots, and the main areas of snow storage will be these 2 large islands and behind where the dumpster is proposed.
Do we need additional signage stating that? In terms of low de-icing areas or no de-icing areas?
In terms of de-icing, if you put a condition in that there'll be no sodium-based de-icing, they fully anticipate that when I talk to them initially, and I believe it may be on our detail sheet for our erosion and sedimentation control plan. So we fully anticipated that from you. And in terms of designating areas for snowplow, it basically we tried to put realistic places where they will be plowing it. As an example, we anticipate a plow is going to push it to back in this location and push it out to the edges here. So I think the location of snow, there's not a lot of options. And in terms of de-icing, please put it as a condition. As I said, they already anticipate that. That's already a condition with the planning board, so we're fine with that.
Amy, any other topics?
Not in terms, from my point of view, not in terms of the project itself, but I just had a lot of questions about what kind of conditions and some more on the findings.
Can I ask one more question about the project? Before we get into that, lighting. Sue, can you talk about what the lighting plan will look like and what we can expect here?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have that plan in this plan set, and I apologize that.
You did state in the last meeting that there would be a lower volume of that because there's not going to be a pedestrian area.
Right. It's not going to be the typical parking lot security lighting or lighting so that if, in the winter, people can see to get to their cars. Obviously, it'll meet the minimal building code with lighting over all the egress doors. But we anticipate it's just going to be the minimal parking lot lighting. And I have the posts. Let me see if I have that plan. Okay, I have some of them here. You can see around the parking lot. We're not proposing to do a high level lighting, and it's basically the minimal that we can do for a parking lot.
Sarah, I'm not smart enough to know what the answer is here, but I know sometimes when we've got a project that has a lot of work right up to the 50, we've looked at or requested alternative lighting, alternative lights. Is that something that makes sense here, or not something that applies in your opinion?
Well, I also think I'd encourage Brian to talk about that with the lighting with the turtles as well.
I'm not especially concerned. I mean, we're trying to direct the turtle. The Reader's Digest version of this story is this area was a fairly large gravel pit in the maybe 60s or 70s through the 80s, and there was a lot of nesting habitat here, and there was a number of other gravel pits in this Beaver Brook drainage, within a crow fly distance. All of those have occluded by now, for the most part, except a fraction of this and maybe the Harvard Sportsman's Club and maybe some residual stuff down at Tower Mark. And so what we're doing deliberately here is reclaiming nesting habitat up to the north, quite remote from the building, not remote in mileage, but remote from an ecological standpoint. It'll be separated by the 50-foot buffer on either side in that ditch. So, and what we've done with telemetry so far, the animals that have left the area have gone to the west, and a couple of them have gone quite a far south. So, in other words, I'm not expecting that this would be something like the loggerheads down in Florida and Fort Lauderdale and whatever that are kind of lulled in by hotel lights and that sort of thing. We don't expect that kind of phenomenon to be going on. Our nesting habitat and hatchling turtles, particular, which I think would be the ones that would be of concern, don't move at night. I did my thesis work tracking them on my hands and knees for countless hours in the woods, and they shut right down in the evening. They don't perambulate the landscape at night. In fact, after they emerge from the nest, they often hit a tussock of grass or patch of moss and just stay there, sometimes for weeks before they move. And they require both the heat of the sunlight as well as just daylight, I think, to motivate them. So we're not particularly worried about the lighting scheme here. I mean, I'd be maybe worried if it was something like a mall parking lot where it was just, lit to the hilt. I think that might contribute, but I don't know that. But I think what we propose here is both diverted far enough away from the nesting habitat that it's not going to be a distraction or an attractant to turtles particularly.
So can you tell us up by where the utility easement is, where the pole has to be replaced up top, are there lights coming down through that small corridor?
Yes. Oh, through this
No, not-
narrow corridor here? No.
No, that's going to be a dark tunnel like it is now,
Okay.
or forested, except for the
Yeah.
addition of the 2 septic fields, but everything else will be pretty much as is.
So this will remain as is, and then there are the lights, like I said, about every 120 feet coming down Monarch Drive. So this will remain dark.
Okay.
Actually, from the back of the building, the only lighting back there is going to be over the emergency egress doors.
Okay. Chase, does that help?
Basically, from here back is dark.
It does if others are satisfied. Like I said, all I'm smart enough to know is that it's a consideration. Not looking at it.
And this is also full cutoff, dark sky compliant lighting.
Okay.
May not make as big a difference with the concern of the turtles, but it's in compliance with the standards nowadays for parking lot lighting.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd also sort of point out at this point, you may have noticed Natural Heritage did issue the no take under the Wetlands Protection Act part of things, but there will be a conservation management permit plan under just MESA, which is in the works.
And Amy, just a kind of a side thought on, because I've been drafting the final versions of this conservation permit. We propose, reporting both in the near term for the first 2 seasons, fairly exhaustive or elaborate reporting and documentation, and then go to a 5-year periodicity or as needed for just management and maintenance of the nesting area. But we've noted that we're going to submit the reports to Natural Heritage, I think, by December 1st of any year of field work, and we'd like to provide the same type of thing to the Conservation Commission. But whereas it's a public, that would be kind of publicly available material, I think, once it goes in your file, and it is a collectible species, we'd rather not serve up a treasure map to your file system. I don't know if that can be categorized as not fully public information so that we can provide you with it, or we haven't discussed it with Natural Heritage, but
Yeah, I'd be a little reluctant because it's so easy for that to just fall through the cracks and get copied. We had talked about maybe you do the full report to Natural Heritage and just provide a more bland executive
kind of
summary.
generalistic something. Yeah, I mean, we can provide numbers and things. Just maps is what's always kind of if you give somebody a treasure map. I did a talk at was it the Sudbury Valley Trustee? No, it was someplace 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and showed pictures of the nesting habitat at my thesis area on a Tuesday, and I went out there on a Friday, and somebody had driven up to it, stuffed out a cigarette on the ground, and tore open the nest cage and stole all the eggs.
Oh my God.
I'm kind of gun shy.
I would love to see it, but give it to me on
So
flash paper or something that's going to disappear.
Yeah.
it sounds like there's still going to be quite a bit of language and a little bit of going back and forth on this with language. So where are we? We've got to keep going. So for our meeting tonight, where are we with this? Are we, the commission members, are we at a point where we're comfortable? Do we want to go forward with this? Are there other discovery methods that you're interested in? Where are we at this point? Because we do need to keep going.
My personal take, Sarah, is I'm good going forward under the act and the bylaw.
I second that. I appreciate your efforts, Sue and Brian.
Okay. So
How do you want to hammer out the conditions?
I was just going to ask you that's the biggest part, right? 'Cause I agree. I'm comfortable with this now, but I feel like there's a pretty big list here.
okay. Well, I think that's something that Sue and Amy and Brian are going to have to kind of really muddle through that for sure, but let's go ahead and offer a motion if,
I'm not gonna write conditions without you guys.
yeah, no, in terms of a
Okay.
checklist. So Sue can certainly help with that checklist for sure.
But I think, and Sue or Brian might have another opinion on this. I believe if the commission wanted, you could close tonight so that at least they are comfortable that it's closed. But vote at the next meeting and hammer out the order conditions in between then.
You have a DEP number?
Yes, it came in this
Yeah, it
afternoon.
was just issued.
No comments.
I kept checking and I was like, oh, where is it?
Not
I didn't see you on the
974.
list, yeah.
So Sue and Brian, are you comfortable with that or we'll keep it open?
We're
think we're-
comfortable with it closing.
And whatever we can do to facilitate, I know it's going to be a kind of elaborate order. And so if there's things that we can do to reduce the burden, I think we're plenty happy to do so.
I think it would be a working time to kind of go through and really start to have a checklist of everything that has to be put in the order of conditions. Okay.
If I can maybe sit down with Sue and or
Okay.
Brian to start hammering some of that out. There's numbers I want to get out of you that we certainly don't need to do now. The commission could vote to close and could also, if you're amenable, vote to approve the proposed work within the conservation restrictions. That'd be a separate vote.
Commissioners, what would you like to do?
I like
Or,
that approach. I think-
or we can keep it open and have it all set for the next meeting. So we've got 3 alternatives. Sorry, Chase.
I was gonna say, I'm happy to take incremental steps here. Close it, approve under the restriction, and then ultimately issue the order of conditions in a couple of weeks.
Okay. So
We
we would
don't
need to
anticipate
first,
submitting any additional information, Sue, right? So as far as
No,
closure,
we're all
wouldn't be a
set.
problem if you.
okay, so let's go, so 2 separate parts here. Let's go with a motion first, if someone would like to do so.
I move that we close the public hearing for 1 and 2 Monarch Drive, Mass DEP file number 2040941.
09
974.
974.
0974.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Brian?
Ryan Crowley, aye.
Okay.
Maxfield, aye.
Myself, Chase Carvig, aye. Sarah?
Sarah Seaward, aye. Okay, that is unanimous. And then the second part of that would be a motion for work as prescribed in the conservation restriction area. Anyone want to make a motion?
Move to approve the work within the conservation restriction area associated with work at 1 and 2 Monarch Drive.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call votes. Kyle?
Maxfield, aye.
Brian?
Ryan Crowley, aye.
Myself, Chase Carvig, aye. Sarah?
Sarah Seaward, aye. Thank you. So following up with that, both have carried successfully, and we will continue to work for the next meeting, which is November 15th, in hopes to have the order of conditions approved at that time. Okay,
Great.
All right, thank you for your discussion. Have a nice week. Okay,
Thank
the
you.
next hearing
Thank
is
you all.
the 8 o'clock continued public hearing, notice of intent, 43 Mattawanakie Trail. U47-48, no DEP number yet, modification to retaining wall and patio system. Who is here that would like to address that?
Ryan Proctor here from Dillis and Roy on behalf
Okay.
of the applicant.
Okay, Ryan, if you'd like to go ahead and do an overview after our site walk a week ago and then where we are to date, that would be appreciated.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here for a second. Okay. So first off, thank you for everyone that came to the site walk last week. I know the weather was less than ideal, so I appreciate you making the trip out there. Since the site walk, we have received DEP comments and a file number as well. And that file number is DEP number 2040972. With that, they had issued 2 comments, both relative to the same thing. They had inquired about the mean water elevation of Forge Pond. And in a follow-up comment to that, they noted that a Chapter 91 license may be required if the proposed structure is in contact with that mean high water mark, with that structure being the dock that exists there today, and then the revetment and the sonotubes that we're proposing for the deck. Since issuance of those comments and the site walk, we've made a couple plan changes. So I'll go through those quickly, and then I'm happy to answer any questions relative to anything I talk about. The first plan change that we made, we added some detail to the cross section underneath the proposed deck. There was some concern relative to any washout of the material that we're using for backfill underneath the deck, which will be the existing material that's there now. So to provide some additional stabilization of that, in addition to using the wall blocks that are out there today to stabilize that slope, we did add a geotextile fabric underneath those blocks, a Marafi 150N or something equivalent, just to prevent any washout of that material through the wall that we're proposing on that slope. So just one more stabilization item there to prevent washout, stabilize the slope underneath the deck. That's hopefully going to remain untouched after this project is constructed. We also added a construction sequence to the site plan, and I won't read through it line by line, but essentially the intent is here to create a working area and stabilize as we go. So we're going to remove the patio pavers that are on the patio right now, pull back the wall blocks, establish the slope, and then work our way out before the construction of the deck. And the intent of that is to create a stabilized area, sort of piece by piece, so we don't have an entire area of unstabilized earth at a time. So as we're creating that slope, creating what will be finished grade underneath the deck, we're working our way out, stabilizing the slope with the wall blocks, with the fabric, and being kind of thoughtful and organized about how we're going through the construction process. Lastly, I did add a note that the wall blocks shall be spaced within 2 inches of each other. And those are the blocks that are going to be stabilizing that slope underneath the deck. And the intent for that is to, we didn't want it to look like a unorganized pile of rocks underneath the deck. So we're adding some sort of organization to that slope, so it'll look more like a rock revetment underneath to protect against any waves or the high water mark when it does come up. Lastly, the only other comment that came up at the site walk was relative to the roof drains for the existing house. I believe there were 3 of them, one at the corner of the overhanging deck here, and then one at each corner of the house. So we, in speaking to the owners, unfortunately do not know exactly where those come out. We don't have any records or pictures of those. So the best that we can offer, or what we're proposing at this point, is during construction of the deck, particularly in these areas where it's likely that, or possible that those roof drains do outfall, we can do a little exploration during construction to see if we can find those, and then we could either install a dry well or just daylight them through the revetment. I'm happy to hear your thoughts on that if you have any opinions on that. But those are some options that we thought relative to those roof drains. I think that's all that we had for plan changes. If I missed anything, please let me know, but I believe those were all the items that we talked about at the site walk and at the opening public hearing. So at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions or comments you may have.
Ryan, I have a few questions. I do believe that during the previous filing, we had a discussion of where the top right drain, that there was a dry well that I thought was supposed to be installed. So I'm a little disappointed that we have not done discovery, because I thought we were pretty clear that going forward, we need to know where those are going and where they're going to go, because that's an incredible amount of water to then interfere with the structure. That's one comment I have. And a question I have is, in between these organized rocks or pavers now, what is going to be in between them? Is that going to be soil, sand, concrete? What's going to go in between them on your stabilization wall?
So we didn't have any material in between. They are on the, they are going to be on top of the fabric there. The note does say a maximum of 2 inches, so I guess the intent would be to have them spaced pretty closely together here.
So when the fabric degrades, what's going to happen? Because potentially that fabric is going to have wash over it from high water or boat traffic as well.
We could certainly add some smaller stones, some trap rock in between those if that's what you have in mind. We're happy to explore those options to provide that additional stabilization.
Okay, so those were two of the questions I have. And then did you look at chapter 91 and that high water mean level?
So yes, so it's likely that the mean high water, just by looking at the staining on the wall that's out there today at site, that we likely will be in contact with that. We'll be intersecting that high water mark, and we will have to work that out with DEP for the existing dock regardless. So we're happy to work out that whole process with them and obtain that permit through the Chapter 91 license procedure.
Okay. And can you go back to your previous exhibit for a second? I'm looking at the removal of the existing bottom of the cross drain where it said removal. I can't see that. Yep, up there. Does that say that we're going to remove that existing retain? So it says existing retaining wall will be removed. Is that the whole wall there or the bottom? It was unclear where that arrow was going.
I'm sorry, this is the vertical wall that is leaning towards the water right now and right on the water face that we're proposing to remove. And those will be the blocks that we use along that slope.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
I have a couple more for you, Ryan. Talk to me about the sonotube installation, because what I see here is looks like a 4-foot sonotube that's maybe embedded a foot into that slope. How deep do you anticipate going with those sonotubes?
Yeah, so the sonotubes in the back, further away from the water, are going to be closer to 4 feet, and they're going to be all precast sonotubes. This is a bit of a mislabel here in the drawing, but these ones up by the water, we do anticipate them being a little bit deeper because we don't have the same amount of cover from the slope there. So these will likely be a couple feet deeper to provide more stability and so that we have that cover from existing grade.
Okay, that's more or less what I anticipated. So here's the question for you. If we're going to install those and we're going to dig below the water line, very, very close to the water line, we would anticipate those excavations to fill up quickly with water. What is the plan for pouring the concrete and the high turbidity water that's within those excavations when you either pour the concrete or place the sonotubes?
Yep. So they will be precast. So we'll be dropping them in to a dug hole, and then with respect to water, we do propose to do this when the lake is drawn down this winter. So that would mitigate some of that concern relative to the hole filling up. But ultimately, these things can be cast in water. So I guess that's the intent. With the lake being drawn down, hopefully to minimize some of that, and they are precast, so we're not pouring concrete right up against the water.
Fair enough. I guess what I'm getting at is what I don't want to see is a whole bunch of muddy water coming out of these holes as we're placing them and so on. if you need to pump those out before you place them, or in some way manage that water so that it infiltrates rather than runs into the lake. We're
Yep.
right on the lake's edge.
Understood. And certainly if pumping is necessary, we can do that. We do have the silt fence barrier there, pretty close to that limit. So hopefully that would function as designed and capture any of that sediment up against the water there.
Now, talk to me about what you mean when you say these are we pouring wet concrete here, or are we placing a preformed structure?
It'd be placing a precast concrete structure.
Okay.
What's the longevity, the expectation, I guess, lifespan of that concrete in submerged water?
I do not have that answer for you tonight. I'm happy to do some
I'm-
research on that.
Just curious how long that's going to last.
Yep.
Well, and you're going the same direction I was, Sarah. I think the applicant would be wise to consider sealing that concrete. Typically, that's what you would do, a foundation or something like that, to seal that so that you minimize infiltration of the water, particularly right at the water line there, where it's going to get wet and then it's going to go through freeze-thaw cycles where it's relatively shallow.
So I don't mean to monopolize this conversation, but I do have concerns with uniform block being used on the area that we're going to have underneath to help stabilize. I've seen recently on some of my places that I visited that walls, or not walls, but the stones that were used were not uniform. They varied greatly in size. They were compacted well. And I think that sometimes when things are just too uniform, things can slide. So I'd like to, and I'll try and find a picture of an example that I can share with the commission, but I really want to make sure that as that lake rises and the boat traffic comes through with the wake traffic, that we're able to kind of like have things, the water come in and recede and not pull everything back with it. But that's just one of the many concerns I have for that site. So. Brian or Kyle, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't have anything other than what Chase, you guys just brought up with the concrete columns. That was where I was headed.
For me, nothing new to add.
Sarah, if I may, Brian, have you checked with the building department about what they might require?
I have not yet, Amy. I did receive your email. We do intend to talk to them. Certainly if we need to obtain a building permit for this. But we wanted to present these revised plans to you guys first.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that they don't change anything
Yeah.
that you're showing, so.
Gotcha.
And Ryan, we appreciate that, but I think the wall is over the standard 4 feet. Using Kyle's child as a measure mark from the water up to the wall. So,
And it would just be the pier, the footings themselves.
Right.
Needing it.
Okay. So I come back to my question on those drains, because I think that potentially is part of the challenge that we've had in the building of the first wall.
Yeah,
So a little more discovery and a little more homework. Is that what you're thinking? So
Yes.
we can try to do some more research on the roof drains. See if we can track down the history of that.
And so, and then I don't know how, if it impacts us with the chapter 91, if they have any different requirements for you. So some of the things, building inspector for sure, discovery. And then I'd like to have you focus a little bit more on how those blocks or bricks are going to be stabilized on top of your, whether it's erosion matting or whatever you're going to use to try and keep them to settle in and not slide.
Got it.
Okay. Great. So we meet again on November 15th. with your permission, we would continue on to that date.
That's fine with me.
Okay. Okay, thank you for joining us, Ryan. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for your time.
Next on the agenda is the 8:30 Durkee and Kay homeowner work updates.
I would mention that the hearing for the Great Road in Robinson has been continued to November 15th.
Yes, sorry, yep. And that's 287 Great Road and 25 Robinson Road.
So what I did here is, because at the last meeting, the engineer and applicant had asked to be continued to November 15th, that I just posted this as just an update. It's not really a discussion of what the engineers are doing. So we tried to advance some of these. And I think, I believe that several of these projects, where they've done, for instance, a patio or something like that, I would have issued a minor project approval for them because they're outside the 50, they're in the existing lawn, they didn't require any regrading. Most of those owners have either signed the acknowledgement or been at one of these meetings, or I've had a face-to-face with them on site. So there's sort of that category. There's the category of projects where I believe we still need some amendments to the as-built plans. And then there's also ones where further work is needed to bring the site into compliance. So do you want me to just give you my recommendations and we can go from there? All right, I would recommend that you issue certificate of compliance for 12 spruce, 13 spruce, and 17 spruce.
Can we do them individually, or can we put them together and just make note of each DEP number?
I think we can just put them all together.
Okay.
If the action is the same for those three.
When this document that you put together, what's the difference between issuing a minor project approval and issuing this certificate of compliance? I'm just
The minor project approval basically brings it into compliance. And then the certificate of compliance is something they can record and get it over with.
So do we need to approve you, or you already have the authority to do that?
I already have the authority to do
Okay,
that.
perfect.
So at this time, are you seeking a motion for those three, 12, 13, and 17?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do we have someone that would like to do that? But we do have to reference the DEP number on each one with the street. We can bulk it all in.
Sure. I'll make a motion that we provide certificate of compliance for 13 spruce, DEP number 204-0812, 17 spruce, DEP number 204-0807, and 12 spruce,
Yep.
DEP 204-0811.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Kyle and Brian, for that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Brian,
Brian Crowley, aye.
Kyle,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
myself, Chase Carvig, I'm on. Sarah,
Sarah Seward, aye. So that carries with the approval of the 3 on spruce. Any
Okay,
other
then-
recommendations at this time, Amy?
There are 2 where there are no outstanding issues, but I haven't heard from the owners at all.
Okay, so
They-
I would request that we hold on that.
Just waiting those. Okay. And then the 3 lots on Douglas. I was going to go ahead and get the minor project approval set, but they're not ready for the CFCs because the engineer owes me some stuff. And then since Mr. Balin is here from 3 Fir, these are all very nicely grouped. All the properties off of Fir have issues that need some I don't know, attention. Mr. Balin's property, now that the fence posts are up, they say, no mowing beyond this point. Well, everyone's mowing beyond that point. So I met with them, like maybe 8 or 10 people, last week. I just knocked on doors and walked around the neighborhood. So we discussed, he understands he needs to stop the mowing. But unfortunately the fence he has put up does cross that line. So I told him he either needs to relocate the fence or come in and try to get it approved to be beyond the area.
And that's number 3 for, pardon me, 3 Fir Lane.
Yes.
Would the commission like to have Mr. Bellin address this now or wait and put it forward as a discussion item at a different time?
I was kind of assuming the commission want to see the fence moved. So if that seems right, unless you,
No.
it is just around lawn. But it does cross, those barriers.
Mr. Balin, would you like to introduce yourself to the commission and at least tell us verbally the construction material and approximate size of your fence?
Yes, hi. So my name is Evgeny Belin. I'm I going with my wife the property at 3 Fir, and yeah. So we do have small dogs, and yeah, we put up a fence so that they don't run away into like the coyotes around deer, and now that we see the posts, the one angle like the fence is roughly rectangular, and one angle it crosses the line. It gets into the buffer zone by a few yards, I would say. Amy, by any chance, would you have a picture that you took, or
I don't
wanted to
actually,
show?
not today.
And that's okay,
so
because we can go out and drive by, but with your fence, it sounds as though you would just have to move one of the walls to
One of the
pull
corners.
Okay,
Exactly. So there's actually like if so basically there are two posts standing like this, and the corner is just like it's cutting a little bit into the line, like a few yards.
okay.
We would need to move the fence a little bit forward. At that angle.
Would the commissioners like to acknowledge that you could allow him to go ahead and move that? Or do you want to drive by and look at that first?
Alternatively, I can also take a picture and present it next time.
Well, I think we're also cognizant that the ground is not frozen. And so if you can have someone move it sooner versus later, that would be appreciative.
Yep.
I would say go ahead and move it.
Okay. So I would be very cautious of your measurements to make sure you don't have to move it again. So to just make sure you take the corner off your house or your lot line and do that. So
yeah,
The posts are very obvious. The markers are very obvious.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Commissioners okay with that? Allowing him to go ahead and move it? Good. Okay.
One the last question is so the builder, when he built the house and made the lawn, he actually he actually it's an artificial lawn, he basically put a little bit of a soil on top and seeded it, but it is also so the post is actually inside the lawn a little bit. So anything that needs to be done at this point, or can I just stop mowing it? What would be the recommendation?
I was thinking maybe just say, mow it no more than once a year.
Okay, all right, that works.
Or if you want to plant native trees and shrubs, by all means, but keep
Sure.
it mowed down.
All right, fantastic.
Okay. We appreciate you coming in.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
I think in that case, since the commission is getting cooperation, we probably don't need an enforcement order. The other two houses on Fir, one, let me think about this. Five Fir, they have a fort down in the woods, which I'm really not too worried about. There's a couple of them. There's one way down, which looks like it has carpet or something hanging over things, which I'd rather see removed. Lawn clippings that have been thrown over the side and mowing past the signs. So I will try reaching out to them again. But if I don't hear anything, it might be worth doing an enforcement order just to get this on paper. And ditto with one Fir, which is a little more complicated because they have widened the driveway in the buffer zone. So there's more impervious. So that might get a little touchier.
And I think if we can ask them to come in, my concern with lawn clippings is they're established. Once people see it and they do it once, they're going to do it again and again and again. So
There's several piles, yeah.
Yeah, they don't break down as easily. So, and then the ones that have not communicated with you, Amy, I would give them one kind of last shot as well, and we would carry these over to the next meeting.
Okay, yeah, they got a copy of the order conditions, both from me and from Dave Guthrie,
Right.
as well as saying they need to sign, the form. It just hasn't happened.
Okay,
So to be clear, we're not issuing any enforcement orders tonight.
not tonight.
I don't think tonight, no.
I think we'll carry on with the process one more. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bellin. You're good. Okay.
Thank you so much.
yeah.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Amy. So nothing else with Durkee and Kay? So just to recap, so this Thursday at noon and then plus 5 p.m. will be at 35 Queen. And then we'll ask to try and see who would like to be on the November 3rd Cobb with Chase. And I would ask that if you've had an opportunity to really read the last version of that, if you're not in attendance to that meeting, just kind of send your comments along. I think that would be helpful as well.
And it is complicated because you have the original conservation restrictions, which overlap the new language, their memorandum agreement. It's a lot to absorb.
Yep.
And we really only care about lots 9 and 10 and maybe parcel D. The rest are going to be the conservation trust problem, basically.
Okay. Are there any other sites that, Amy, you wish for us to kind of put on our radar in addition to Queen?
No, 9 Air is starting. So they got their erosion controls up. I don't know if they've done anything besides erosion controls, but they have those up. And I don't think anything else. We're just kind of driving around looking at sites that are underway.
Okay.
Going to start the conservation restriction monitoring hopefully next week.
Okay. And you'll let us know about the 495 spill if we need to address that or not.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? I'm glad we were all able to meet. Thank you. Wish everyone a good week and town meeting and election day. So,
Ugh.
all right. Let's see.
Good night.
What time is it? So it is officially 8:55. So I would like to get a motion to close this hearing.
Motion to adjourn.
Second that. Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call. Brian?
Brian Crowley, aye.
Kyle?
Kyle Maxwell, aye.
Myself, Chase Gerbeck, aye. So.
Sarah Seward, aye. All right. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.